What's up, y'all? In this video, I'm going to show you the top alternatives to OpenClaw. With that, let's get started. So the first one we're going to look at is TrustClaw. Unlike OpenClaw's default setup, where all the API keys are stored in plain text, TrustClaw uses OAuth, so it is safer. And you can deploy the same skills, but it doesn't rely on the open library that is available through OpenClaw's Claw Hub. It uses its own closed library with lots of integrations. So you can also use the same messaging platforms that you're used to with OpenClaw. And you can make about 20,000 tool calls per month. And then after that, you have to go on a paid plan, which I think is about $29. I couldn't find the pricing info. This was just me researching all the different alternatives that some AI mentioned that it could be $29 per month. So that is TrustClaw. Again, right here on their main page, you can see it says this is done securely and deploys in 60 seconds. The next one we're going to look at is NanoClaw, and you can check this out on GitHub. Here's their GitHub repository. And if we look at it, it has already had 1,200 forks. That means 1,200 different people have already installed NanoClaw. So let's go back to NanoClaw and look at this compared to OpenClaw. So one of the big things about this is the container isolation piece, which means that everything runs in the containers and not on your local host system. So you don't need to have this on your local Mac Mini. Also, it is much smaller, so it doesn't need a large memory system, and it does have WhatsApp interface. Hopefully other tools are coming soon, but right now it looks like it's a WhatsApp only. And it also has your scheduled tasks. So the cron jobs that you're currently doing in OpenClaw, you can also do that on NanoClaw. Now to set it up, you can just run this command and start installing it on your machine. Or if you want to install it in the cloud, you can run up a virtual server and do it that way. Here are some of the requirements that you need to have in order to run this command. So just keep that in mind. And then one thing to note that's mentioned in their FAQs is NanoClaw is completely free to use. It's open source, so you can install it through GitHub. However, it currently is an alternative to OpenClaw, but with only Claude integration. So you will need an Anthropic API key to get started with NanoClaw. And you can see here, compared to OpenClaw, NanoClaw can run on smaller devices as small as a Raspberry Pi. So definitely a smaller footprint and hopefully faster compared to OpenClaw. The next one we are looking at is IronClaw, and this is directly on GitHub. Now, what's cool about this is it's security first. So it's being dubbed as the super secure alternative to OpenClaw. And you can see that here in the first bullet where your data stays yours. What's super interesting to me though about this is the self-expanding capabilities. It says build tools on the fly without waiting for vendor updates. This is something I'm definitely looking forward to playing with and figure out how do I use these self-expanding capabilities. And the one thing that most everyone has been talking about is prompt injection into your OpenClaw instance, right? You could use a Claude Hub skill and that could have a prompt injection that could expose your API keys, or worst yet, if this is on your local Mac Mini, then it could expose more than that. Maybe your connected email account can be exposed. So what this is saying is it safeguards against that by having built-in security. From a security-first perspective, the first thing is the WASM sandbox, which is essentially a WebAssembly container, which means if, let's say, you're using a tool to surf the internet, that will run in its own sandbox and away from everything else. So it is self-contained and it will not harm other files. The next is the credential protection so that your secret keys are never exposed. We already talked about the prompt injection defense, and then finally the endpoint allow listing. This is super critical. This basically means that if your OpenClaw tool, or in this case, IronClaw tool, is trying to send data, so your agent is trying to send data to a website that is not secure, it will block that request and not allow it to go any further. So this is super awesome. We also have the heartbeat, quote unquote. So it's multi-channel, always available. We talked about the Docker sandbox, which is amazing because it is an isolated sandbox, its own bubble where these different jobs are happening. It also has a web gateway, which is super important. You can also run routines, run the cron jobs. We talked about the heartbeat system. It has that. So that's like a ping every 30 seconds that, hey, are you still here? Are you still alive? It also runs parallel jobs. So think multi-agents, and it can do self-repair if it's stuck on an operation. Now, apart from multi-tool operation, it also has tool building. So you can simply ask it to create a capability, and technically it says that it should be able to do that. It can also connect to different MCP protocols, and then there is a plugin architecture similar to Claude Hub. So definitely check out OpenClaw on GitHub. Again, I'll drop all these links in the description, and if you go back up here, you can see that so far this has forked about 189 times. Next up on the list is ZeroClaw. I came across this on dev.to's blog, so I'll link this blog. You can check it out. Here is the GitHub repository for ZeroClaw, and it already has 1100 forks. So what is different between OpenClaw and ZeroClaw? First thing is that it is tiny. It runs on less than 5 MB of RAM versus OpenClaw, which needs more than a gigabyte to run. So you can run this on smaller machines. You don't need a Mac Mini to run this for sure, which means it has minimal cost and it is super fast, loads in less than 10 milliseconds. And here you can see some of the comparisons between ZeroClaw with OpenClaw, Nanobot, PicoClaw, and here's our ZeroClaw. And this one is written completely in Rust. Further down here, you will see some of the prerequisites for Windows and or Mac OS. So you can check that out. And then here is their quick start guide along with their architecture diagram. Now, what's pretty cool is the fully swappable trait, which means you can swap channels, you can swap different tools, different programs using their config menu, and it is fully, completely swappable. One of my favorite features of ZeroClaw is the migration of the memory. So it'll take your memory.md file from OpenClaw, and if you run this command, it will migrate that to ZeroClaw, which is super awesome. Next up is Nanobot. You can check this out at nanobot.club, and it's dubbed itself as a research-friendly AI assistant that is designed for simplicity and is ultra lightweight. This is developed by a group of people at the University of Hong Kong. It is open sourced and fully free and is 99% smaller than CloudBot with only 4,000 lines of code. You can go through all the FAQs about this, but similar to CloudBot, it is deployed by a single command, and you can just type the pip install Nanobot AI. Check out their GitHub page. Very easy to install. It's lightweight and it supports all the messaging platforms. So currently it has 8+ messaging platforms, which you can find under their FAQs. And then these are the LLM providers that you can integrate with Nanobot. So this is your next tool if you want to compare something to OpenClaw. So check out Nanobot. All right, for our next one, this isn't necessarily an OpenClaw alternative, but rather a way to run your OpenClaw serverless. And this is called Molt Worker. This is through Cloudflare, so you can deploy it right on their servers. What's cool about this is you don't need to manage the server. Cloudflare does the management of that server for you. Plus, it has built-in security because it integrates with your sign-in provider, and that's how Cloudflare protects your privacy. And then it routes through Cloudflare's AI gateway, but you still get access to the OpenAIs, the Claudes, the Olamas of the world, and you can create those authentication keys right inside Cloudflare. Now, the catch here is that this is not free because you're going to need a worker within Cloudflare. So you can read through this blog. Ask AI to explain it to you. Ask it how to spin up a worker, but those workers are not free there. I think minimum $5 a month. So you're looking at the worker cost. And if you run your worker 24/7, then your costs are going to be even higher unless you program your worker to go to sleep when it's idle state. This is ideally for enterprise grade applications and those people who just want their OpenClaw to be on a virtual server and not on a local machine. Now, there are a couple of more tools that I want to quickly touch on which go hand in hand with OpenClaw or any of these alternatives. The first one is MEM U Pro. And this is memory for proactive agents. So you don't have to explain to every new installation of Cloudbot or any of these other alternatives what your life is about. And to explain MEM U further, I've vibe coded something using Google AI Studio. This is what our current memory logs look like. So you might have had a conversation with AI about a hotel that you don't like, a food restaurant that you don't like, or a specific food that you love. And all of that lives in thousands and thousands of lines. So every time your agent has to reference the memory, it has to reference the entire memory, but not with Memu. So Memu makes it easier because it distills everything into something called memory item layer. And that makes it easier for these agents to reference the memory. And this is important because this saves token consumption and these agents are already token hogs. So you want to save on your token consumption. And this is one way to do it, is to give it this memory library of sorts. So check out Memu.pro for that. And then for this final tool, check out LiteLLM.ai. And what's cool about LiteLLM, first, it's completely free to use. And it is a proxy for your LLM API keys so that if any prompt injection happens, any of these tools fail, your API keys are safe. You can generate proxy API keys and you can still connect to all of the amazing models. They have a theme functionality, so you can give your team members access to specific models. You can create groups, and within those groups, you can give access to one or more models. Definitely check out LiteLLM.ai. And there you have it, folks. These are some of the alternatives to OpenClaw. I'm sure there are new ones coming out every single day. If you would like me to try your alternative to OpenClaw, or maybe you have a recommendation, put that in the comments below. I will check it out. And until next time, keep prompting.